Welcome to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy such as the deferred sales trust is an amazing way for you to create and preserve more wealth, exit assets of any kind, defer the capital gains taxes, and invest in optimal timing into real estate, a business venture, and or other investments to your liking, so you can create and preserve more wealth and help your clients, friends, investors, and partners do the same. For those who don't know me, my name is Brett Swarts, and I'm founder of Capital Gains Tax Solutions. In each episode, we're joined by some of the best real estate, financial, wealth, and business minds in the world, where they share their ideas, deal stories, and inspiration. So together we can make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. I'm excited about our next guest. He's out of the great state of Arizona, and he's on a mission to help us build more wealth with hotels. We've had a lot of guests on the show talking about multifamily, not a lot on hotels. And what I love about Michael's background, not only did he serve in the military and the Navy, thank you for your service, but he also has extensive experience in the multifamily space and now has transitioned full time into the hotel space. He also is the host of the Richer Geek podcast. Please welcome to the show with me, Michael Stohler. Michael, how you doing?
Good. Thank you, Brett. It's a pleasure to be on.
Absolutely. And for our listeners getting to know you for the first time, would you give us a little bit more about your story and your current focus?
Sure. Yeah, as you said, I was in the military. Then I became an airline pilot. About 20 years ago, I bought my first rental. As everyone, listen to the rich dad, poor dad, and completely failed. I had 7 or 8 units, completely failed because I didn't know how to be a landlord. I consider that the pre-Google days where I couldn't Google how to be a landlord. Fast forward, I knew it was the thing to do. I knew real estate was it. And fast forward to now, I've had owned and managed about 1,400 keys, and now we've transitioned to hotels. As soon as the cap rate started getting really low in the multifamily space, I decided to switch over to hotels where you still have a 9 to 10 plus cap rate.
Excellent. We'll be diving into that and all the reasons and secrets to building wealth in hotels. But before we go there, Michael, I do want to take one other step back. I believe we've all been given certain gifts in this life, and these gifts have been given to us to be a blessing and help to others. So I'm curious, what are those one or two strengths that you believe you were given, and how do those help how you help and bless people today?
Sure. One of the biggest things, I have an analytical mind. I'm about as creative as a rock. So the analytics allows me to dive into the numbers and see if something is a good fit. And a lot of people hate that. I absolutely love analyzing properties, going over the budgets, the pro formas, and really beating down. I also have the patience, and I'm not emotional about the assets. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care where it's at. All I care is about the cash flow. And that really helps me to not get emotionally attached to saying, wow, I want this type of hotel. I want this type of multifamily. I want this class A. Don't care. It's not emotional. That's why you buy assets. It's all about the cash flow.
Excellent. So it would be number one, your analytical mind. Love diving into the numbers. Love finding ways to grow numbers, and sounds like the story behind the numbers to see if it's a good
Mhm.
fit. And number two, you have the patience not to make emotional decisions, but again, let the numbers lead you to if it's a good deal or not. Is that a fair summary, Michael?
It is. Thank you.
Excellent. And so now let's dive into the topic at hand, which is building wealth in hotels. But by the way, if you want to get with Michael Stoller right now, you can go to the richergeek.com, the richergeek.com. Michael, what is the number one secret to building wealth in hotels?
Wow. If I could pick one secret, it is there's no HGTV episodes on hotels. So there's not a lot of individuals, there's not a lot of people getting into hotels. It's kind of a secret. It's not one of those growth platforms that people deal with, fix and flip, single family, and it usually stops at multifamily. When you take it outside of that type of a normal asset class, there's not too much competition on the types of hotels that we're dealing with. Another secret is that I learned that I love is I get to change my what you call rent every single day and sometimes 4 or 5 times a day, kind of like you would see at the gas station pump where you drive by, and then 2 hours later the price has already changed. It's just dynamic pricing that's really helped us out.
Excellent. So it sounds like number one secret is not as many people getting into hotels. I know we're still, at least the ones you're investing into, not as popular maybe as mobile home parks or multifamily or
Hmm.
fix and flip. And then number two, the ability to have dynamic rental pricing, which allows you to perhaps increase in real time your revenue. Is that a fair summary so far?
It is, and if I can expand on that, what's very nice is because my rent is every day. If you take a 100 unit multifamily complex, it's $1,000 a month. That's all you can do. It's $1,000 a month for 12 months. I get $100 a day or more every day for those 30 or 31 days per month.
Mm, okay. So just the pure revenue factor on this.
Hmm.
Excellent. Okay, so what's the number three secret to building wealth in hotels?
Location and the type of asset. It's kind of like the A, B, C, or D. In hotels, you have limited service, you have economy, you have full service, you have the resorts, you have all the different types. What I've learned, especially through COVID, is the type of asset class in the hotels, the limited service. I call that the blue collar type of hotel. It's the quality and the comfort in, um, maybe a Super 8. They It's limited service. You get free internet, maybe free breakfast, and then they're gone. It's a transient hotel business. I don't have to worry about conference. I don't have to worry about restaurants. I don't have all that different type of overhead. You have just a very plain Jane lobby, free continental breakfast, and free internet. And those do a lot better than worrying about F&B, food and beverage, conference areas, all that other stuff.
Okay, so it sounds like the key here is maybe perhaps the secret is keeping it simple for your niche and staying focused on that. If I'm reading
Hmm.
between the lines, and for yours, so what you found is limited service type of blue collar quality and comfort inns. They tend to be transactional and or transient, meaning just there for the night, place to stay, safe, as clean as it can be, and then eat
Yep.
food and go on. Is that a fair summary for the limited service of the hotels?
It is, and as you can see, there's just not a lot of overhead. You have less employees, um, less taxes, less permits. It's less everything, so it's very simple.
Excellent. Yeah, it's simple. It's simple, especially given where multifamilies come from, right? 20
Hmm.
years ago, 10 years ago, it felt like a lot of, at least some of the states where I'm from, California, they wanted you to build and be in business, and then now it's like it seems like they don't. They want to make it as difficult as possible. So talk about that transition from hotels versus multifamily, and maybe just the general business environment as it pertains to just running a business and not being bogged down by a lot of the regulation or the minutia.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I learned out of COVID. Prior to COVID, I would have bought or built a hotel in any state, and I don't want to get political, but then once you start learning about the regulations, even with hotels, are they going to force me to shut down if something happens at COVID point 2.0? How friendly is the state as far as businesses? Are they going to force you and have rent moratoriums? Are they going to do these types of things? Are they going to force you to regulate? Are they going to all these different things? So I've learned that I really need to now pay attention where I didn't used to on the different city or state regulations on whether or not I even want to do business in that state. So that's one aspect. The other thing is you have to realize that multifamily it's real estate, it's long-term housing, and that's how the government sees it. Hotels are a business. It's two factors. You have real estate that sits on underneath, that is the land that appreciates, but you have this building, you have this franchise, you have 20 plus employees. So with all the different regulations, it is considered a business, and that's one of the things that helped us during COVID is because it was a small business, we were able to get the PPP loans, we were able to get the EIDL loans. That is the biggest difference is I would never recommend jumping from multifamily into hotels unless you have some type of a business background where you know how to run a business from just all the aspects of handling employees, all the taxes, just the minutia of um, running a business. It's crazy sometimes, but it's very fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's a great point. By the way, you can learn more of Michael Stohler, Stohler, by going to the richardgeek.com, where he hosts a podcast there. And I love the way you said that, Michael. You said it's how friendly is the state for business? There's
Mhm.
how friendly is the state for insurance right now, I think is another topic, right? How friendly is the state for, net migration? How
Mhm.
friendly is the state as it pertains to rent control? Right? How friendly is the state as it pertains to lenders wanting to lend, right, and provide really competitive rates for commercial properties. I think that's so important that you do look at it with an eye for if you're shut down out of business. I mean, it doesn't really matter anything else. So if they're not going to let you, go to open your doors and serve your customers, it's like how long can we survive without oxygen, right?
Right.
And the body, if they shut it down, then how long you can last. And guess what? Those banks are not typically going to do anything to help you on that. And guess what? Those property taxes too, which is kind of the one that is I always scratch my head on when they force people to not do things, but then they force them to pay property taxes as if the money just comes out of nowhere. But that's kind of the reality we're in these days, and
Mhm.
hopefully not again to that extent. But yeah, any other thoughts on that, Michael?
Yeah, you hit it on the head. It's a lot of people don't realize that. They say, "Oh, let's get something in California, Chicago, or New York, or Florida, anywhere, any given state." But my last comment on it is that's just one more thing now that's reared its ugly head is just more and more regulations. That's what governments do. That's what states do. They love to regulate. Please, everyone, before you just buy something, find out if something happens, if the worst case scenario, COVID 2.0, what have they done in the past during COVID 1? And do you want to potentially be in that type of situation? I know a lot of people that own California out of business, wonderful locations, wonderful hotels, but they're forced to shut down. And the banks only gave them a couple months deferment. Like you said, the taxes, everything, they still had to pay everything, but they were not allowed to do business.
Yep, very well said. Yeah, let's get a little bit tactical and practical, Mike, if that's okay. I'm
Sure.
curious on you mentioned in the kind of in the intro 8 to 9 caps, right?
Mhm.
And seeing much more competitive than let's say 4 to 6 caps with multifamily. Maybe talk through a recent deal that you put together that you're or the offers you're putting on deals or deals that you close. Just give us anything to give us kind of a feel for where you think the hotel industry is at this point for investing in commercial real estate.
Sure. One of the deals we just did, and personally, I like to do franchise under the Marriott, under the Hyatt, under the Hiltons, under the Wyndham's Choice. I don't do independents because it's like um, you don't want to deal with the big guys, competition, because it's just so. There's just so much work. You have to spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to compete with someone that has 100 million rewards members. It's just very hard to do an independent unless you're in like a resort town. Then it makes sense. The deal that we did, it was 64 keys, 5 million. It was around 10 and a half cap. It grosses about 1.35, 1.4 million. And then you go through just like you would a multifamily. What kind of expenses are there? How can you save? Are you going to use property management or not? So you go through those types of things. How many employees, and then what can you save? So that's very similar. What's the area? That's very, very important because it's not long-term housing. The hotel industry is it off the highway? Is it in a major city? Uh, what kind of access does it have? So those are the things that you think of. What we call is in the hotel industry is we call it drivers. what drives somebody to stay at this hotel? Pre-COVID, we'd say, hey, it's by a university. Who cares? There's always going to be students. Well, not during COVID. If you're next to a resort or ski resorts, well, that's one driver. But let's say that you're off the highway, you're in between, like going from Texas to California. You're just in a very nice spot, easy to get to. It's a transient hotel, but it's also right across the street from a hospital. So you have all these different things in all these different areas. It could be next to spring training. There's several drivers that we look at. This one in Arizona, it's next to four different drivers, plus it's in a business park. So that's one of the things that during our analysis and due diligence, we look at why would someone want to come and stay at this hotel? And then within that class, what is your competition? Hotels are a lot like your car dealerships. You can have a row of car dealerships all on the same street. People are like going, that doesn't make sense. Well, you have the Ford loyal people, you have the GM loyal people, Toyota. It's the same thing with hotels. We can have four hotels all in a row, but as long as they're not the same category or not the same brand, then it's fine. My Wyndham can be right next to a Choice, can be right next to a Marriott, because people want to get those points and those rewards. Once we do that due diligence, and hotels probably take 6 or 7 months to close. It's a long process. One of the great things about being a business is we can do CMBS loans, we can do SBA loans. So it's not just conventional or variable rate. So we have some options there because it is a business. So we want to put that type of, what kind of loan package do we want to put in? Um, and then it goes from there. You have to qualify with the franchise. They're not going to be allow you to embarrass them and run a hotel, one of their branded hotels, into the ground. So you have that process also. You have to be vetted by the franchise. So it is a very fun process, but it's rewarding in the end.
Excellent. We're talking with Michael Stohler. You can go to therichergeek.com, therichergeek.com. So, Michael, I'm curious your model now, right? If someone's listening to this, they're like, hey, I really like what Michael is saying. Maybe I want to invest with Michael. Are
Mhm.
you syndicating? Are you able to fund? How do you work with people who might be listening to this who are high net worth and are accredited investors?
Yeah, great question. We have the three projects that we have that are going to be in the next 2 years are all going to be ground up builds. One is going to be in they're NDA, so I can't speak too much about them, but they're going to be in the Arizona state. A couple of them in the Scottsdale, Phoenix area, and we do syndications. Minimum $50,000 in. You do have to be accredited, and all three of them will most likely be individual syndications.
Okay, excellent. And so it sounds like Arizona, three projects ground up built.
Mhm.
Curious, if someone put $100,000 in today, what's the average IRR and the average
Yeah,
multiplier over like a 3 to 5 year period?
yeah, we're talking about internal rates of return around 10 to 12%. In the new builds, you're not going to see anything for probably 3 years. In the hotel business, we call this patient capital. We have the summer times. Everything's down right now. Nobody wants to come to Arizona when it's 115, 118 degrees. So we usually don't do any dividends in the summertime because we're just battening down the hatches and waiting for the season to come. Um, we sometimes do on some of them. We'll do preferred returns of 10 to 12% also, and then they're usually 7 year holds. I can sell within 5 in case someone comes up and says, "Hey, I have to have your property," or we can, in case something like COVID happens, I can stretch it out to 10. So these are longer holds with hotels because it's not, you can't put a lipstick on a multifamily and then sell it in 6 months or a year or 2 years. This is a small business that we have to build up. We have to uh, get all the expenses, all the capital, all the just everything working as far as the business part. So it is a longer hold.
Okay. So it sounds like no return for 3 years, typically patient capital. wait for a season to come because Arizona obviously is hot. 10 to 12% preferred returns, 5 to 7 year holds at 10 to 12% IRR. Is that a fair summary?
It is a fair summary, and the reason why the first ones, you're not going to see anything for 3 years is because our new builds. Once we open up the syndication for one of the new builds, it could be 7 or 8 months before we even break down. There's going to be another 2 years, 1.5 to 2 years for it to be built, and then we have to get 1 year of everyone knowing that we're there. That's why that it's delayed. I can't start paying anything, unless we start making money, and we have to make sure the reserves and capex is there. That's why it's a little bit longer.
Yeah, so I'm curious, Michael. Just the cost to build, right, and how long it
Mhm.
takes, and even just it's pretty patient capital, right? For
It is.
if you're looking at T bills at like say 5%, U.S.
Hmm.
Treasury, it's liquid, right? You're looking at maybe lending to different operators, multifamily operators at let's say 8, 9, 10, 11%, and it's paid monthly. And um, talked about just where do you feel like that's pretty conservative what you're saying there?
Hmm.
I'm just thinking if I had $1 million right now, right? Walk me through, maybe some tax advantages here,
Yep.
some write off on those first 3 years, something beyond just hey, no money for 3 years, and then 10 to 12 versus what you can get now.
Yeah, that's a great question. So most of the investors that we have in the hotel business, they're not that interested. They have the wealth where they're not that interested in these monthly dividends or these quarterly dividends. They need to park money that is in a safer place than the stock market. They don't want to put millions and millions of dollars into one thing. So they want to diversify. They may do some multifamily, but they want that long term, just might just keep this money there. And then at the end of this 5, 7, 10 years, you're going to get 2.5 times your investment. While we do that, we always do what's called cost segregation on all of our hotels. Cost segregation means that I can accelerate our depreciation, and we depreciate every stapler, every lamp, every bedpost, just absolutely everything. And to give you an idea of the K1 and the cost segregation on our last purchase, we were able to year one write off about $1.4 million first year, and that made the investors extremely happy on their K1s because it transfers over, right? Um, and then you have the depreciation, normal depreciation, and then some of the business tax benefits because it's a business.
Okay. I like that. And so I'm curious, was that a new build that got the 1.4 million, or was that existing a
That
product?
was an yeah, that was an existing property
Okay.
that we bought. It's the one in the business park, the 64 key. So it was even a small hotel, and we still got $1.4 million first year, uh, due to the cost segregation process.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent. We're talking about with Michael Stohler here, the richardgeek.com, richardgeek.com, and he'll be sharing how to also find him at the end of the show if you want to be a potentially investor with him and check out his stuff. So wait for that in just a few minutes. But before we go there, Michael, I do want to move it to the part of the show where we talk about some capital gains tax challenges. And by the way, we're also streaming expert CRE secrets. I forgot to mention that
Mhm.
as well. We do a dual podcast for the commercial real estate experts and investors out there. So we will also welcome everyone who's listening to that on our YouTube channel, as well as the Capital Gains Tax YouTube channel, or listening to this on iTunes or Spotify, wherever you may be listening. We so appreciate your support. Please consider rate, reviewing, and subscribing to the podcast, the YouTube channel, giving us a 5-star review. That helps us to spread the message to more people to create and preserve more wealth. That being said, Mike, let's talk about the biggest frustration when it comes to the 1031 exchange as it
Mhm.
pertains to especially a hotel developer like you when you're exiting businesses that aren't 1031 eligible and real estate where it has to be like, kind, or equal or greater value. What would you say your biggest frustration with the 1031 is?
My biggest frustration is twofold. It's very hard for an LP to come in as a 1031 into a hotel. I don't know how it is on multifamily, but some of the rules is you you have to be on the GP side. And then that gets very frustrating for me because hotels take so long to close. It's really hard to do a 1031 for me if I were to sell something. All of a sudden, I have to now identify something, so I'm identifying a lot because it might take me 2 or 3 months just to do due diligence on whether or not I even want to buy something. And then it might take more than 6 months to actually close it. So I'm running into all these different time limitations for my 1031. So that's it makes it really frustrating, and there's some anxiety there, and just to kind of rush things when we're doing 1031s.
Absolutely. We call that the shotgun wedding,
Yeah.
where you got to get engaged in 45 days, 100 and married in 180. And you mentioned it earlier that sometimes these escrows take 6 to 9 months. But not even that. When you're building, it takes 3 years,
Hmm.
right? And so if you want these LP investors to come in to projects or deals, they have to do equal or greater value. And basically, we have found for developers is that the 1031 exchange is essentially irrelevant because I want to
Yep.
sell my hotel for 5 or 7 or $10 million, and then I want to go buy land for 500 to a million and build for another 3 to 5 and build it up over a period of time. I don't want
Yeah.
to buy necessarily an existing hotel for 10
Hmm.
to 10 or $12 million, right? I want to go create more wealth through development, and or I want to sell my existing, but I don't necessarily want to buy in the same marketplace, right? I want to wait for
Hmm.
an opportunity to make sense, and sell high and buy low, not sell high and buy higher. And then you add to the fact that, guess what, some LPs want to go their separate ways.
Yeah.
They've been waiting for 3 years to get anything to get cash flow, and they're waiting at that 5 or 7 to get paid out. And so most syndicators, they just don't even 1031, right? And
Hmm.
that's why we want to introduce everyone who's listening to this. We have an amazing solution, and we focus on building an effective capital gains tax plan using something called a deferred sales trust, which can
Yeah.
give you flexibility and eliminate the need for the 1031 exchange when exiting $1 million assets. And so, whether you're an LP, a GP, whether you're selling stock, cryptocurrency, or a business or a primary home, we no longer have to use the 1031 exchange ever again. You can be free from that, and you can move your assets into a deferred sales trust. Now,
Hmm.
here's the cool thing: if there's ten operators or 10 GPs and 10 LPs, each of them can have their own deferred sales trust, or they can decide to pay their tax.
Hmm.
If you're doing a partial 1031 exchange and you have some extra boot left over, you can do a partial deferred sales trust. If you want to invest back and build hotels, no timing restrictions with the capital, all tax deferred, you can do that. But you want to understand what it works, how it works, and what it is, and if it's a right fit for you. You can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel to learn all about that. You can also check out the new book called Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan. We just came out, #1 bestseller with Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank. He's also in the book, and a number of other real estate developers and operators. So check that out on Amazon, Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan. Michael, any thoughts on that? Have you heard of that before, or how does that all sound?
Yeah. It was amazing to me. I had you guys on my podcast, The Richer Geek, and it was the first time I had ever heard of the deferred sales trust. And the wheels were spinning. I was like, oh my God, just, all this anxiety, I could have, lessened it. And it's fantastic. For instance, on one of our hotels that we bought for 4.8 million, we're getting ready to sell it for probably we're wanting 11. So we're negotiating. That's a lot of money. And I'm thinking it's like, oh my God, what am I going to do with this money? It's like I can only do so much. I can only place it so much. I don't need all of that much money to place. And when I heard about this deferred sales trust, I was like, going, okay, there's something that I can put partial, maybe half of it, so that I don't have to worry about all that tax. Fantastic.
Thank you so much, Michael. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And yeah, check out that episode, Search the Richard Geek podcast, and look for my name, Brett Swarts, on that. That being said, let's move into the lightning round. Mike, are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Knowing what you know now, Mike, if you go back to your 25-year-old self, what's the one golden nugget you make sure to tell yourself to do?
The biggest thing, people, is get mentors. Don't do it yourself, especially in this day and age. You can either spend the money and lose the money, or you can spend the money wisely and learn from all of us that have done it in the past and learn from our mistakes.
Fantastic. Number two, Michael, great answer. What's the number one book you've recommended the most or gifted in the past year?
I usually gift a book. It's called Money Secrets of the Rich by a good friend of mine named John Burley. He co-wrote a lot of books. He co-wrote President Trump's real estate book. And what it teaches you is once you start accumulating wealth in real estate or whatever form of wage that you have, it's how do the millionaire next door, how do they handle their money and what do they do in order to keep that wealth? It's a very eye-opening book.
Okay, excellent. That is The Money Secrets of the Rich, John Burley. Check that out. Question number three, what's the number one leadership quote or theme that you strive to live by?
Boy, excellent question. And I ask this people, it's like, hey, I want to get into real estate investing. Why? Well, I want to be rich. Wrong answer. Know your why, everybody. What is your why? Why do you want this? It's not that easy. So for me, when I thought about this, it was like I wanted to build a lifestyle that I didn't need a vacation from. And that was my number one thing. And it's pick your why and then go for it. For me, it was like, hey, the money will come. And everyone that's listening, the money will come. But man, being able to work and do it where you want, when you want, and build that lifestyle that, like, I can work every day because my work is a vacation. I love it.
Absolutely, absolutely love that. Last question, Michael. After all your success, helping all the people you've helped, and blessing people who help them to grow wealth with hotels and multifamily, I'm curious. How do you stay centered in your values? What's maybe the
Mhm.
habit or the pattern that you've developed, and how do you stay encouraged to charge forward to reach new heights?
Yeah, and it's God. It's so hard because we're in a nation and a culture that's so divided. So my faith, number one, keeps me grounded. I never forget where I came from, which is a small town of about 2,500 people in Indiana. So I'm just a farm boy that did good, and then I give back, and that really keeps me grounded. I'm on the board of several charities. I'm president of one charity this year, and just being able to say, okay, I've been blessed in my life, let's bless other people now, and that really keeps me humbled, just giving back.
Amazing. Well, Michael Stohler, it's been more than a pleasure to get to know you a little bit more. I want to encourage you to keep using your gifts of being analytical, right?
Yeah.
Going to the numbers, geeking out on the numbers, and seeing if investments make sense on the cash flow, being patient with the capital and your investors' capital to make sure these things are making money and are producing as well. Just, yeah, keep having faith and keep never forgetting the Indiana and also giving back. And so thank you so much for being on the show. For our listeners, as promised, if they want to get in touch with you, but in particular, if they want to potentially invest with you into these hotels, would you remind them or would you let them know
Mhm.
what's the best place for them to find you?
Sure, you can go to therichergeek.com. That's the podcast website. You can also go to Gateway PE, as in private equity, gatewaype.com, and you can find me on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Gatewaype.com. That's gatewaype.com. Check it out. Thank you so much, Michael, for being on the show. So I thank our listeners for listening to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast. As always, we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the deferred sales trust, is an amazing, flexible way for you to exit highly appreciated assets. Also, thank you for our listeners who are listening and watching this on Expert CRE Secrets podcast and or YouTube channel. Appreciate everyone out there. If you want to take some action today, you can. You can get with Michael. You can get with me. And you can buy me with capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. And then you can also support us by rate, reviewing, subscribing. So appreciate everyone out there. And we will talk to you again real soon. Make it a great one, everybody. Thank you.